All right, welcome to another week of All Out in the Open, and this week we are in the scriptures with Clare Dalton and Sara and Jeremy Kerrigan. Say hello.
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 Wonderful. So glad to have you. What would you like our listeners to know about you?
My name is Sara Kerrigan. I'm
Not the video game person.
not the StarCraft
For you nerds
character.
that are watching
so
and listening to this podcast.
Is that a
one of my
notable
students,
doppelganger?
It is it's just
Wow.
the same name.
Just
Sara
the same name.
Kerrigan.
Okay.
They look
one of
nothing
my
alike,
students
but-
when they met me said, "Have you ever played StarCraft?" I'm like, "No."
No, but I know the reference.
Yes.
Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
so
Okay.
not that Sara Kerrigan. I'm an Arizona native. I've lived here most of my life. Jeremy and I got married a little over 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We have 5 kids from 9 to 19 now. Our oldest just turned 19. He's on a mission in Michigan. Thankfully, a few hours away from the rest of Michigan.
Yeah, where the big shooting was. That was
Yeah.
a little scary to be like
Hard time.
shooting in Michigan and freak out for 2 seconds before we realized how far away. And then obviously awful
Yeah.
still. So.
Still too close, no matter how far away it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mostly stayed home with our kids for about 15-ish years before I started doing some other stuff, but also at home. And now I'm in my second year of teaching high school full-time, and that has been quite the adventure.
Yes, quite the adventure.
Teaches both English and yearbook.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I still don't sleep a whole lot, but it's getting better.
The first couple years are
The first
a
year was
wild
ridiculous.
Ride. Yeah.
But I do like it, so that's been fun.
Love that. Awesome. Okay, Jeremy, and what would you like everyone to know about you?
I am Jeremy. One note, we did get divorced in February. I came out to her as gay 2 years ago, 2 years and a
That's
few
right.
weeks.
Last
And
month.
we've been on a
Last month.
fascinating journey ever since then. Other things you should know, this is that we're recording in my office.
Yes.
We have been for the last, year and a half. And usually I'm kind of hiding behind the scenes and making sure all the cameras work and no one comes in and disturbs. But I have a chiropractic office here. I'm an Arizona native as well. But we've lived elsewhere. We spent a couple years in Iowa, Virginia, briefly Utah. I've served my mission up in Washington. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to navigate being co-parents and good friends. She sometimes refers to me as her
Not very often.
gay ex-husband baby daddy, I think is the term. That's my preferred pronoun.
I don't think you got them in the right order, but yeah.
I don't know.
I love that.
Anyways, we're trying to, we were friends before we dated years and years ago. We've known each other since 2001. So 24 years.
Before you were a member of the church, we met.
Before I was a member of the
Right
church.
before.
I joined the church after high school. We dated a little bit. I went on a mission, came home and got married 4 months later.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's us. We do fun things together. We went to a Benson Boone concert
That was really fun.
last week.
Yes.
His music was kind of the soundtrack to our divorce because
Yeah.
that 22-year-old really knows his heartfelt music. And we got floor seats, so we were standing and screaming and yelling like people much younger than we
Floor
actually are.
seats.
And I heard there
Those
were
seats.
4 or 5 backflips.
There were so
Seven.
many.
At least okay, 7.
I looked online.
I got undervoted.
I was
there
too
we go.
busy watching them. So.
I'm sure. Well, I looked online.
He was. Yeah, he was.
It was a great
fabulous. He puts
show.
on an epic
Awesome.
show and
Oh, I
just
love that.
heartfelt music. You pumps you up, causes tears. It was just beautiful.
And
to
it
be
was
there
kind of fun. I mean,
together.
we could have brought any of our kids, and it would have been appropriate for them too. Even though it was a great time, that
Yeah.
was fun to be able to a concert. You could take family to at
Yeah.
this point anyway. He might
Yeah.
learn and grow in other ways, but
I love the
never
concert
know.
scene. There's just an
Oh,
energy
yes.
of live music that
Right.
just I don't know pumps through my veins. So
It's
and that's
easy for
something
us
we've
to
always
get-
had in common. We really like live music and performances and stuff.
Love
We
that.
don't have a lot in common actually, but
It's
we do.
true. We discovered that after we got married.
and
We
sometimes
do
that
both like
makes for-
guys. We discovered that.
We discovered that later.
much later. So, but no, it was so we just both were we just felt kind of alive. It's easy to
Yeah.
get super busy in life. It's
And
easy
not
to
do
get caught
fun
up in
stuff.
the craziness and stress, especially in this queer space. There's a lot of stressful things, and to just go and be ourselves and let loose and enjoy, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a good
that.
break. So that's the biography of us.
Love
So-
that. Absolutely love that. Yeah, and I'm so excited for our conversation. Just kind of see where it goes, and to just let people hear your stories, and your collective story, how that's going, but also individually your journeys. And I think that sometimes we get stuck in this is how things have to go, and so this action is going to lead to this specific consequence or choice. And so
Right.
it's refreshing. It's been refreshing in my interactions. we cross paths a lot. We are at the Ally Nights
Right.
that we host. And so to just see
And we're
how
friends now, too.
we're
That's great.
friends.
Yeah.
And to see how you two relate to each other, and also how you're growing individually, and just that I'm drawn to that sort of like, we don't have to follow what everyone else thinks we need to do. We can figure it out on our own, sort of thing. And so your story is awesome that way, I think, and
Which
and
is
it's also
something
individual.
we've talked about, being in the church, as people in the church, we like to know exactly what we're supposed to do.
Yes.
And we like to know if we do
Yeah.
that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You see how many missionaries come home and struggle because, like, up to and through a mission, it's so like boom, boom, boom. Here's what you do, and missionary life is so every day, all day. It's planned out for you. And
You
you
got the
come home and
landmarks.
it's
You just
like
have to hit the landmarks.
endure to the end. Get married, there's other things, but it's just so wide open, and we struggle because it is easier to be told what to do, and it's very scary when you're kind of blazing trails.
It's easier to not have to have too much nuance when you're making a decision and know, well, this is the right thing to do. This is a good thing to do.
Yeah. And when you're listening to that direction, there's a glass ceiling of like how much you can personally progress, and we can get really good at it, right? And we know how to function in that space, and it can feel like a well-oiled machine until something in life cracks that.
Or we can never
yes.
get really good at it and kind of feel bad about ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
And
At the
it's
same
sometimes
time,
both.
we
We're
can do
having
both
this-
at the
yes,
same time.
100%.
We're really talented
Yep.
as humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
love
like that protection and comfort. Lately I've been thinking about it like a house. We build this house to live in, and it's built off the choices and everything we made. And at some point, there's parts of the house that either weren't built properly or weren't built with full
Wearing
understanding,
out a little
or have
bit.
worn out or out of fashion or something. And sometimes it takes a renovation, sometimes it takes a little repair, and sometimes it's like knocking the whole house down and starting
Demolition.
because the foundation was built on something that wasn't quite accurate. And that's the journey that I've kind of been on, is like tearing the house down and figuring, okay, what's next? And it's a very scary thing to do. It's very frightening and very overwhelming, and also freeing at the same time.
Yeah.
And goes about as smoothly as regular construction.
100%.
Everything's on schedule.
It's like the movie
works.
The Money Pit.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Money
the
Pit.
contractors
Your
always
life is
show
Money
up.
Pit.
It is. Yes.
Love that. All right. Well, let's jump
Let's
in.
dive in.
In Come Follow Me this month, we're in sections 124 to 136. And there are a lot of references to covenants, to temple, what we would now call the temple experience, baptisms for the dead,
Sure.
is outlined in a couple sections, as well as, marriage. And we have some pretty big, hefty chapters in here. So I think maybe I'm out on a limb here, but I think maybe the most well-known section in here is 132. 132
Right.
is now taught as the new and everlasting covenant of marriage, which is synonymous with celestial marriage. And there's actually a good portion in here that's about plural marriage. And so this section is torn apart, referenced.
Right.
There's a lot of heated exchanges. And so we're not going to set that aside and not touch it, but we're also not going to keep our main focus on that. I just want to start saying that.
Right.
There's a lot of different conversations out there, and historians and podcasters and influencers who have shared their thoughts on 132. And so
Even on this podcast previous.
Yeah, and
Charlie and Ben have done wonderful jobs
yeah.
at highlighting some
so
of
I'd
these
point
things.
people to those resources.
Right.
We're not going to tackle and jump into plural marriage. Definitely will be a part of the conversation today, but let's just start off in section 131, because that's kind of our main focus and topic here. And it's a short section, thankfully. It's nice to get those sometimes. And section 131, I think verses 1 through 4 are the ones that are most referenced in this section. So I'm just going to go ahead and read them, and then we'll kind of jump in on them. So it says, "In the celestial glory there are 3 heavens or degrees, and in order to obtain the highest, a man must enter into this order of the priesthood, meaning the new and everlasting covenant of marriage, and if he does not, he cannot obtain it. And he may enter into the other, but that is the end of his kingdom. He cannot have an increase." And so this is taught in conjunction with section 76, which is the plan of salvation, where we learn about the 3 degrees of glory, so telestial, terrestrial, and the celestial kingdom. And then section 131 further divides the celestial kingdom into more categories. And the only scriptural reference that we get to that and explanation of that is these verses. And so verse 2 is the only one that really talks about, well, how is the celestial kingdom then further divided? And the only real point that we have, the only touch point is that new and everlasting covenant. And so these verses have been interpreted to mean that the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, exaltation, can only be achieved through marriage and through marriage in the temple ceiling. And so I just kind of want to start there. There's a lot of layers and ways that we can go in this. And I think that it's important to remember, and this is in regard to, I think, everything we talk about in the scriptures and the church, is that what we understand today is not how it's always been understood.
Sure.
And I would plant that flag on pretty much any topic in the church and the
I
gospel
would
you want to
concur.
talk about.
Yep.
And
I
that
mean, you
understanding.
can even go back 20 years, 30 years,
Yeah.
and the way we understood doctrines or scriptures
Right.
has evolved or changed.
And so I just want to point out in verse 2 that, you know, the second half of the verse does have this little parenthetical aside where it says, meaning the new and everlasting covenant of marriage. And we interpret that today as meaning the sealing ordinance in the temple. And there have been periods of our church and prophets who have interpreted that as plural marriage, that's what that means. And so there have been periods where that's what this general meaning and understanding was, that the highest degree of the celestial kingdom was reserved for those who would commit to plural marriage. And now
Interesting.
we've had prophets back away from that and go, that is not required for the celestial kingdom.
Sure.
But I'm not trying to argue either side. I'm trying to bring up that
It's been interpreted differently.
it's been interpreted differently,
Yeah.
and we've had different understanding, and we have gone in and out of phases of thinking a lot of different things about any one topic in the church.
Right.
And so it is difficult to have these conversations. And I love that you said earlier, Sarah, nuance. Nuance is just like going to be the key word today of, if we don't understand that these things that in our brain have been explained so clearly that
Right.
this is what it means, if we're not aware that you go back 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, and an authority figure was saying something very different, that can be really scary. That can be like
Absolutely.
the foundation has been ripped underneath you, and
Right.
we get defensive. And so I think that happens a lot with these verses. And so,
Well, it literally
Yeah.
triggers, as a chiropractor, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system, you know, and there's warning on our
Breathe-
brains.
breathe a
We go
little
into
bit
the
harder,
fight,
yeah.
or freeze a little bit.
Yeah.
And put
you'll
that up,
notice
and
your
it's-
body
yeah.
sort of have a reaction.
Yep. Well, and you see this all over in society. People hear something that they have been taught was wrong, that they disagree with. And I've been trying to focus, especially with the journey that we've been on. And I got this from Pastor Stan Mitchell. He was on the podcast at one point. He came here to speak, and he said Christians today, and including, you know, members of the church, are focused on like certainty and comfort.
Yeah.
And he said they should be focused on curiosity and courage. And it really opened my mind. I was like, that's what I want to be in. It's like, we can look at this and be like, this is what it means. And we slam the book shut and move on. Well, this is what I was taught. It's like, but what could it mean? What was God referencing? We're trying to understand this divine, eternal, vast principle. And we're going to read 4 little lines, and think we understand it. It's like,
From our mortal
there's
perspective.
more- yeah,
Yeah.
with our mortal, limited minds, you know?
Yeah.
And
I-
if you don't fit into that, oh well.
Well, even just looking at this, it's like, it's all about a man, right? You know?
Yes, it is very
That's-
gender specific.
It is very
language,
gender
pronouns,
specific.
terms in here.
Yeah, it says nothing about how a woman may
It doesn't
enter
say
into
that. It doesn't say that there's any problem with women getting in however they
Yeah,
want to.
they,
Yeah.
So good luck.
they can come in the side door and everything. You know?
Right. If you're going to do it in a very literal reading, the question would be, okay, but what about a woman?
Absolutely.
And I don't think we have ever been taught to read it that way.
Right.
Right. And so then that goes back into what we've been taught and how it goes. And so I guess maybe you
Is
said
it about
something.
mortal perspective?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I think
our
it
mortal
was
mind.
the mortal perspective, the mortal
All
mind.
and I've thought about this a lot in like just even in literature and stuff. I mean, English teacher now, it's all I ever think about. But like,
whether you want to or not.
it's the human brain. We make up so many interesting stories and everything, and all of these may be truths, and all we really have to reference is our experience and our collective experience as humans here on this earth. And the stuff we're talking about supposedly has nothing really to do. I mean, there's a type and a shadow, but we don't have any clue what it's like.
Yeah. And a lot of people have tried to fill in that gap.
I love, I
Right.
talked about this all the time with him, but like Plato's allegory of the cave. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
love that. And I feel like that's
Maybe
life.
Give us a
verse.
synopsis
Okay,
for our
so
listeners.
this was back in a philosophy class that I was only taking because he was in it and had to take it. And it was
'Cause I'm
mostly
so cute.
stupid because the guy was from Germany and
He was the most closed-minded philosophy
Yes.
professor I've ever heard.
he said there was no beauty in the desert.
None at
and then
all.
we
It's so ugly
decided
and
we
weird.
weren't going to
There was
listen
almost
to
a
him.
riot in the
But
class.
that's where I learned about Plato's allegory of the cave, and it's struck true for me since then. So he's saying there's these people that live their entire lives in this cave, kind of in darkness, and they'll see shadows outside of things happening, and I don't even know if I'm telling it right. And they think that this is everything, that the cave that they have and the shadows they can see moving is everything, when really they're stuck in the cave and people are living life outside and just casting shadows that they can see. And I feel like that can be very true to what it must be like for God and all of that he knows and does and what he has in store for us or whatever it is. Like, we have no clue really. We just have shadows that we're trying to make sense of.
Like the verse in the New Testament, we see through a glass darkly.
Right.
Right. And also what you said about we have our experiences, right? That's the lens through which we see, or the cave that we're in is our experiences. And so I think it's an important conversation to have, and I'm not trying to solve anything for anybody or answer any questions.
Hey, if
Right.
you can, go for it.
That's my job. That's why she brought me on the podcast today.
And I think that the context for this conversation, I think, is applicable across a lot of different experiences. Is that, I guess I'm trying to paint the picture of, being younger me, reading these verses, having them taught to me, being in seminary and going, okay, that makes sense. These verses are all about marriage. I have to get married.
Sure.
Right? And in my young brain, marriage was synonymous with a ceiling in the temple. Those two were exactly the same.
Right.
And so when I was growing up and in the life that I lived and everything that I saw, I didn't have any concept of when I was a teenager that I was gay. Like, that wasn't a thing that I thought, right?
Sure. Same.
But it was, okay, I'm a member, I believe, a member of this faith. I have made my covenant. I've started it when I was 8, adding to it, and this is a life I'm going to live, so I fit. So I'm going to be, and if there are options, I'm going to obviously choose the best option.
Right.
So when I'm taught telestial, terrestrial, celestial, I know the answer is celestial.
Right.
And when I read these verses and it says there are 3 degrees, I go, which one's the highest? Exaltation, that's the option, right? And so
no one wants to be left out.
yeah, I fit. I see a potential for that in my life.
Right.
And when I came out, and since then, I read these verses and I have a very different viewpoint and reaction because my lived experience doesn't fit in the box of these verses anymore as they have been explained to me in my life. So I start to ask more questions. I start to push against that box that I feel like I've been in. And I think that there are a lot of people who can relate to that aren't even necessarily LGBTQ,
No.
but just in whatever your life experience is. This is comforting and great doctrine when you're a part of it and you fit.
Right.
It feels different when you're not, whether you've chosen to not be or whether you have been pushed out of said category.
Even growing, like I joined the church at 18, none of my family was members, and joining the church, going on a mission, and even after that, even after we were married, the idea of I'm not sealed to my parents was a very harrowing thought for many, many years. And I remember once waking up in this terrible dream, and we were going to the temple, and it was like at the end of a strip mall, like this giant mall, and the temple was at the end.
Of course.
And my parents just kept getting distracted, and we never ended up at the temple. And I woke up so like heartbroken because mine didn't look like this, and it was like it's put as the pedestal, and everything else seems lesser. When it really, like, the way I've always interpreted some of these celestial kingdoms, celestial, telestial, is like God has a plan for everybody, and it's less of a higher. I shouldn't say I've always treated it this way, but like there's a place and a way for everyone, And I just keep coming to mind this next chapter, 132:24. This is eternal lives, to know the only wise and true God and Jesus Christ, whom He has sent. We put it onto these check marks of complete the temple marriage. You're married in the temple, everything's great, and then people go on like autopilot. And it's like, that's not the goal. And when we're trying to interpret something, I had like 3 thoughts. I'm trying to put them all into one here, but like I relate it to like you, I know you. And if someone's like, tell me about Claire, I'll sit down and I'll say things about Claire. and then they'll walk away and be like, oh, I know everything about Claire, right? No, like that's not how it works.
Must have been a long conversation.
Yes. But if they get my perspective and they
Yeah.
get Sarah's and they get 10 of your closest friends, they're going to get closer. And then if they get 100 people that know you or 200, the more people that we interact with, you're going to see some discrepancies. This person's like, oh, Claire is the worst because this one time she
I know exactly
gave
who
me
that is in my life. The one person.
But other people are like, Claire is the best thing. She is perfect. She never makes any wrong choices. You
I
know,
also know that one
they're going to
person.
get both those perspectives, but eventually, the more you know, the closer. You will never fully know everything
Yeah.
about Claire. Like no human will, but the more perspectives we get, the better we'll understand who you are as a being.
Yeah.
And I think of that like in terms of you're just a human. You're just mortal, you know? We're trying to understand divinity and a God that is supposedly way beyond our limits and our capacity. And we're going to get one perspective. We're only going to listen to the current prophet. And that's the only person that can, it's like, it's going to give us a perspective. And maybe the prophet has, can tell us what we need to know right now. But like, if we listen to the Buddhists and the Muslims, and if we listen to our neighbor and someone who left the church and their perspective, or someone who's in, we're going to get a better idea of who God is. And relating this 132, 24 is like, the more we know God, that's what life's about. And if I hear your experience with God, and I hear her experience with God, and I hear 100 other people, I feel like I'm going to get a better picture of who this being is versus just relying on, this is what I was always taught, this is what that being's like, and this is how I can come to them,
It makes me think of that, I don't know if it's another allegory or something, the elephant, and everyone has their eyes closed and is
Yes.
touching a different part of the
Uh-huh.
elephant. And all of them are right, but it's hard to get the full picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talking about like the 3 degrees of glory, I don't know if I've always thought of it this way, but I've done a lot of looking at how life is and how people are now and trying to extrapolate that to what God might be like. We are all so different. We want different things. We're comfortable in different spaces. Like, who says that we would all be the happiest doing that one little thing that the scriptures is talking about? Or is it possible that we're going to be happy doing something else that isn't that? Maybe some people don't want to have increase and have to continue working hard after this life, because sometimes that doesn't sound fun to me.
Yeah.
And there's been times in my life that the celestial kingdom, like, that sounds kind of intimidating and not very fun.
Yeah. No, really, because
Honestly, I'm not saying it's always that way, but I
Yeah.
felt that way. Like, we're very different. Like,
yeah, that's a
we're not
great
going to
point.
get rid of our variety afterwards. That's part
Yeah,
of
that's
us.
not
Yeah.
the point. And I've also I remember a particular conversation with a friend who asked a question that and this was in my late 20s, that I had just never considered. It was one of those moments where I'm like, how have I never thought of this?
Mm-hmm.
And she just goes, the only thing I've ever been taught as a woman that's like waiting for me after this life is that I'm gonna have kids forever. And she looked at me and she goes, that doesn't really sound good. Do you know of anything else? And I thought, huh.
If
Like,
you're not
yeah, I
watching this
don't-
on video, the look on
I don't
Claire's
know.
face is epic. But-
And so I've thought
Yeah.
about that, and she goes, like, I believe the gospel. I've been a member my whole life, obviously, but if that's the only thing that someone
Right.
can tell me is promised for forever, that's not any sort of motivation. And I went, that's a really good question. And I have no, like, I don't have anything. And and the answer is, we don't know.
100%.
A lot of
yeah.
people fill in that blank. We
Right.
don't even know if as women we'll have children forever. Like, that's not something that's been expressly stated, that
100%.
your celestial glorified body will be producing children and pregnancy like we experience it now. Like, we just don't
Right.
know.
Well, and church leaders have said multiple different viewpoints on
Yes.
this.
And
even
so
in the
that's
early
really
days of the
interesting
church.
that it's
Yeah.
like, what do we know and what do we just think we know and what do we
Right.
fill in? And the assumption, if I'm assuming that whatever I'm filling in my head is the same as what everyone else is thinking in their head, that's usually a red flag that I'm
Right.
off. And Jeremy, to your point, I want to go back to it about that verse, right? To know and your example, right? To know God, and you gave the example of knowing Claire, and I always want to go to the source, right? So and let's say that I get the opportunity to talk to every single person who's ever been on this world and lived on earth and what their viewpoint of God and their experiences are. That's a lot of info.
Right.
But I hope the information that would be more important than all of that is my experience with God one-on-one.
Sure.
Like, right? So even if you had talked to all of my friends and gotten to know Claire,
Right.
and you're like, I know Claire, I would go, Jeremy, we haven't talked to me. You know, like
Right.
someone who's never had a conversation with me, I can't take them seriously.
Sure.
That they would know me. And so that, I think that's just an interesting piece to also add in.
Absolutely.
That like, as we're learning all of this and collaborating all that information, I also want to go to God and go, teach me about who you are and who I am.
Right.
And I want that to hold more weight than anything else that someone else could tell me.
Yeah.
Because of that experience.
An interesting way though to like not counter this, but
Yeah.
to add to this too is like, we have 5 kids, and if you sat each of my 5 kids down and said, what kind of dad is dad? You know,
Yeah.
they're all going to have a little bit different answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way I show up for my 11-year-old son and my 17-year-old daughter is different. Because they're different people with different needs. And Sarah's probably even better at this than me, knowing their needs and showing up. So like, and this is one of the things that I think is really hard for people, is God shows up in their life in a certain way, and that's the way God is. Hands down across the board. This is how God shows himself to man, because this is how a man, woman, you know, to people,
Right.
because this is how he showed up in my life. And I'm like, maybe for a minute stop and think that that's just the way you would hear him. That's the way you would hear divinity, because it comes to you and speaks your language. You know,
Yeah.
we talk about the gospel shall be preached to people in their language. That's not just English or Spanish. It's the way your whole worldview,
Yeah.
and you're going to have an experience with the divine in a way that is applicable to Claire. And so that is the most important for you.
Yeah.
And then we have to be very careful that we
And-
don't then apply that to everyone
And
else.
that doesn't apply universally to everyone else.
100%.
That's what carries the most weight for my experience.
Right.
It should not be the thing that carries the most weight for your experience. It should be
100%.
yours. That's a great clarifier, right? So
Yeah.
the way that God shows up in each of our lives, I believe, should hold a lot of weight for us.
Right.
It should not be then enforced upon that has to be the way that God shows up or interacts with anyone else. And I think that that is an interesting clarifying point that has been convoluted in current Christianity. And just how that's showing up in our world today is a lot of,
100%.
this is how I see God. You don't believe in the same God that I do if you don't believe exactly as I do, and accept that. That causes so much unnecessary conflict. And
We've had lots of those
anyways,
conversations.
we can go deep on that.
Something interesting just from our journey is when I started coming out to people, there were a lot of opinions of what we should do, you know? And you may even touch on this more than me, but it was like, oh, of course, you're just going to stay married. You can't break your covenants, you know, is what I got from people.
Didn't say much to me. They didn't have opinions about what I should do.
And then on the other end, there were people that were like, well, of course you're going to get divorced and live your more authentic life and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't know. And people suggesting, I mean, all sorts of things. You know,
No
like,
matter
well, maybe
what
you can
he
get
did,
a
it was gonna be
boyfriend on the
wrong.
side.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do this. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And so Sarah and I, it had to be a personal experience for us. We had to be very prayerful, be very considerate, because we don't know a lot of things. We were saying before the podcast, like, people would be like, well, we know that like being gay will go away in the next life. I'm like, actually, that's in that category you talked about. That is not a doctrine anywhere in the scriptures. You know, we have all this like new revelation, Book of Mormon, Doctrine Covenants says nothing about homosexuality.
Not a single thing.
The
That
Bible
blew me
makes a
away
few
when I started
references.
looking into it.
Jesus himself says nothing about homosexuality in all of the red words in the Bible. It's other, you know, it's so like there's so little we
And
actually
a lot of those
know.
terms didn't even come in until
Yep.
long after the Bible
Yes.
was written.
Interpretations, yeah.
And so if we knew
How
it was
can
going to
we-
go away, or we knew it was going to always be there, it would
How
have
can
been
we make big
pretty
life
easy,
decisions based on them?
Yeah.
which was
No,
incredibly
but Sarah, speak more to
frustrating.
that,
Go
because
ahead.
I think that's a really interesting point, is that people have heard things taught, and this is the way it is. It's clear and simple. Therefore, you have to do A plus B equals C. And you're living the experience going, wait, hold on. That isn't how that
A
adds up.
plus B is equaling like a fabulous F or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure what this symbol is. Can I get interpretation
It's one
on
of
what
those
this
little
is?
math symbols that I don't like, but it can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It's just like you're saying. Well, we were talking about how, as a church, as a people, we like things to be really clear cut. We like to know what the right answers are, what the wrong answers are, what the right things to do are. And when that starts to break down, it's very unsettling, because we thought that we knew the plan, we knew the rhythm, the everything that we're supposed to fall into for happiness, and it works for a lot of people. It does. It's not going to work for everyone, and that doesn't mean that they're wrong or that they can't know God or that they can't live a spiritual life and like live a good life. And we have to figure out what we individually need. We should be really busy figuring out how we can be close to God and what we need to do with our lives, so we don't have time to be judging what other people should do with their lives.
Mic drop.
Podcast over. We're moving.
Yeah. You just solved 90% of the world's problems.
I don't. It's been a really
You're the mote in your own eye.
a really hard thing to try to figure out. And when I started looking into stuff in the Bible and the history of everything, I was like, oh, this isn't nearly as cut and dry as we thought. And I still don't know what's right. I don't know, and I probably never will, and that makes me kind of angry sometimes. But
Yeah, that's valid.
But God and I are good enough deep down that he's okay with me kind of being grumpy at him for a few years, I think.
He can
Yeah.
handle it.
He can handle it, and
A few years is like
understands.
what?
Right,
You
it's
know.
it's nothing,
Right.
and honestly, my bedrock is a lot deeper than that. But I have to figure out what goes on top of that now, because the other layers, the movable layers, have been washed away a little bit. So I have to figure out what's going to go there. And it's hard, and sometimes it's easy, because knowing that there's so much we don't know, how could I make any decision that would be harmful to others on purpose, or would cause me to push Jeremy away when even if we're not married, he's my family, he's our family, he's extremely important to me. And it's been so worth the journey that I've had to take to, I don't like crying, to fall out of love with him on purpose and just learn to love him.
Oof. To fall out of love with him on purpose and just love him. There's a lot there.
It's something I've learned a lot from her, is like loving someone is wanting what's best for them.
Yeah.
And that's hard, you know? I wanted to share a couple things about her. As I came out to her, the first thing that came to her out of her mouth was, "I'm so sorry you've carried this for so long by yourself." And then she embarked on a study. You know, she embarked on reading as much material as she could. She likes answers. She likes to know things and research them. And she read way more about, what does the Bible say about queer experience, gay people. And she came across this wonderful video by Matthew Vines. He did a really fascinating video, and he's written a book. And in there, she started watching it, and I was really touched, because she sent it to me later on, but she said she started watching it and she liked what he was saying. But she stopped, and she said, like, as she prayed, and was like, I don't want to be deceived by a flowery argument. I really want to know the answer. She was earnestly seeking an answer, which I think is a big key. Yeah. When we're trying to come to know God, yeah, we can have all these things, but if we just come at God from the same perspective we always did, and we come trying to prove the point we were always taught, we're not going to be open to another answer. And she was, and that journey was deeply beautiful and incredibly hard and emotional. But ultimately, we do love each other, and we wanted what's best for each other, and that's what weighed into our decision. But I think there's so much to learn from the way she approached that. And
I want to point out that it's not necessarily the answer I was looking for. It would be really nice to get an answer that it will go away, and we just need to hang in there, because that's not what I wanted. That's not even what he wanted. At the first, he's like, I don't want anything. When he came out to me, I don't want anything to change. I don't want this to change. Like, I don't want us to not be married or anything. And I was like, okay, but let me know if you change your mind, because that's like, let me know if you're starting to think differently, because I couldn't see that working very well. I mean, I could see it working if we both really wanted it and we decided it was right, and we could do it 100%, because we do love each other, and we're both good at sticking to our promises.
Keeping our covenant to take care of each other.
And we're not married anymore, but we talked about this a while ago. He is still keeping most of his covenants to me. He's still taking care of us. He's still supporting us, not just monetarily, but like as a person and as a friend. And just like, there's been all sorts of stupid things that have happened to me in the last year.
It's the year of
like our lightning,
two car accidents,
a tree on our house,
flooding,
all this stuff, and
currently my car is sitting on the side of the road somewhere, because it's not currently working. It's a brand new car, anyways. We could go on for hours, but despite all of these things, we're still there for each other.
And he's there doing a lot of the same stuff he would be doing if we were still married, and I'm still doing some of the stuff I would be doing for him if we were. I don't cook for him, because I was kind of stopping that already. I'm not very good at it. And he's hard to cook for. But
I haven't found that verse, so I think
that you
good.
must cook.
Yeah,
you must cook for someone if you love them. Yeah. And we're still just, it's really complicated. And there's no blueprint.
Our favorite word is complicated.
There's no, this is how you should do this.
Well, you know all about this. Once you open up the door, there's no simple answer.
No, there's really not. And it's been really beautiful what God has been able to do with my feelings for him, because to go from being married to someone and to be able to end up feeling like I love him even more because I actually know him now. But also like to be able to like not feel possessive of him in any way. Like when he goes on a date or something, he calls and tells me about it. About 80%. He knows me and he
tell
knows
you
what's
pretty much everything.
so far, yeah. But like, and I'm not like, I'm like, I would love for him to find someone he's happy with that would fill some of those spaces that I never could.
And there's a moment, we're talking a lot about our story, so
Sorry.
we'll
No,
go back on
this is what we're
subject,
here
but
for.
like, I remember this moment when I cuddled with a guy for the first time, and I kind of understood what she'd been telling me all these years. You know, we'd cuddle on the couch, and about 15 minutes later, I was like antsy or moving. Not that I wanted to be away from her, but I just was uncomfortable or whatever. And she would be like, I just want to crawl inside of you.
And
I
he's
was
like, ah.
That's weird, you know? And then I'd like go out of town, and 2 hours later, she's texting me and like, I already miss you. And I just didn't understand.
He's like, I just
I love her
left.
deeply. And I'm like, I left, I'm coming back. I don't know
Yeah.
the big deal, you know? Like, it was complicated. And then I cuddled with a guy, and we were there for like hours just holding each other. And like, I didn't want to let go. And I left. And then 2 hours later, I was like, this is sappy, but I miss you already. And then I burst into tears. And I was like, I get it. Like, I get it. I've been trying to fit the round peg into the square hole. I've been doing all the right things, but this is biologically, like, this is what people experience when they're in love with someone. It's not the person I'm, like, going to spend my life with or anything, but, like,
Yeah.
this is different. And I started bawling, and I called her, and we cried together. And was like, I will thank you for, like, showing this to me. And I just bawled and said, I'm so sorry I didn't line up, you know? That we both couldn't feel the same way at the same time, but I'm
Yeah.
also incredibly grateful that she taught me that, you know, and we don't know where life goes, but like we love each other. And I see, so, you know, it's not everyone's story. I want to say this to, like, because I'm sure there's going to be a
Right.
woman that listens that her husband told her he was gay and it really just rocked her whole world. And like, those are valid feelings. And if you're angry at him and if you're bitter and if your whole world's crashing down, like, that's all valid. You know, we're not posting Sarah's like,
Yeah.
please be like Sarah. She's so awesome.
Or if someone's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever you came out as, we're staying married, and you're both in, and that's what works.
100%.
Like, you know, yeah.
Space for that journey because it's their journey. And like, but
And
in
they
our
should have
case,
support in whatever that journey is.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her love and support. Like, the way this has affected me mental health wise and otherwise, like, it's been incredible. And all through our marriage, it's been, and even our divorce, it's just seeing the hand of something bigger than us, the hand of God, the hand of divinity that's put us together, because we've been able to support each other in ways that we never would have thought possible, you know? And it's just such a beauty thing. And I kind of want to dive back into the scriptures.
Yeah.
unless
Well,
you
can I
have more.
comment
No, that's fine.
on
Yes,
that
yes.
on one
We're,
thing?
good. We're
and
like
then we'll
running the
jump in?
podcast. We're like, Claire,
No,
you
you're
can
good.
chime in occasionally.
But I
forget it's Claire's podcast.
I'm thinking about, I'm trying to think about what's the purpose here, right? Like, what's the whole point of the plan of salvation? What's the point of covenants and promises with God, and understanding, keeping them and breaking them, and how they change.
Right.
And it just a thought that I don't know that I've like crystallized, but that I'm thinking is, I don't know that the model that I was presented, that covenants are like the secret passcode to get into the
Right.
exclusive club kind of thing, that doesn't make sense to me, and it hasn't for a long time. And I think that ended like teenage years. I started hopefully developing into it's not about gaining access, it's about becoming,
Right.
right? And like, covenants are helping me to become like God, right? And so I think that there are sometimes the ways we interpret these things of like, temple recommends, and do you have one or do you not? It's really cut and dry. You answer these questions, you answer them the right way, you have it, you've gained access. But there are so many, and some people are going to like this, but the truth is there's so many shades of keeping temple covenants.
100%.
Like, you can break down any one of those questions to get a temple recommend, and in 10 people you can get 11 different answers of how you're supposed to, what that really looks like in action. And so I'm just looking at these verses thinking, okay, to obtain the highest degree of glory, it's about making this covenant and keeping this covenant. And there's so many varying degrees of that. But what I just felt and saw in the two of you talking and sharing your story was, my thought was, they are learning something about Christ that I haven't experienced and understood, in the way that you relate to each other, your personal growth, understanding what marriage looks like, what ending a marriage looks like, and what it looks like after. Like, there are layers there that I cannot comprehend, but I felt drawn to both of you, the Savior, heaven. Like, I felt a cracking open of something there, right? And to me, that's what covenants are for. Right. And so, yes, on paper, we could look at a story and go, oh, a marriage ended, that's bad.
That's a failure.
That's a failure. Oh, someone isn't keeping...
need to pick sides.
Yeah, someone doesn't have a temple recommender. Whatever it is, right? There's all these sides. Yeah, you could say that. But I'm sitting here going, I'm learning about my Savior and having this conversation with you and seeing your example. And it's not that I need to copy and paste, stamp that in my life and do it. It's going...
You don't have to be married to a guy.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.
I don't think Anna would like that very much.
It's understanding, am I building and understanding the relationship behind the covenants that I've made to bring me closer to Christ, and understanding that? And does Christ accept that offering? And my offering doesn't have to look like anyone else's or like what a paper said it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But am I, and I feel very strongly about that, right? Like that's what keeps me going and keeps me in the church and moving through, is that I am comfortable that whatever conversation I have with my heavenly parents in Christ, I can own it. I understand it. And I don't need anyone else in the room for that conversation. I don't need to point to someone else to go, they gave me the okay, so we're good, right? Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look at my Savior and my Heavenly Mother, my Heavenly Father, and go, the life that I've built is evidence of who I'm becoming, and I'm not there yet, but we're all in this together,
and
right?
What do you have for me now?
100%.
Yeah, and so what the next step is, oh, I did something wrong? Great, let's fix it.
Yep.
Let's learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, and let's move through that. And that is the bedrock. I like that word you said. Yeah. That's the bedrock of what keeps me going and understanding, and is the core of my Christian faith. Love and that. So when I look through this differently, it's a different lens.
Yeah.
Something on that.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
have a thought too.
No. When I was counseling with my bishop just a little bit, and more, it was really just, it was a conversation. It was him asking, how are you doing? How can we help? This and that. And towards the end of it, he asked me, what are we here for? What are we here to do? And I think I thought I had a good answer. It was probably something about becoming more like Christ, discovering who we are, whatever. And he's like, we're here to learn how to love. And that's been helpful for me a few times, because sometimes I'm not sure if I'm doing the right stuff. But I am learning how to love. How to love him, how to love myself, how to love a lot of people that I don't even know.
And what an offering.
Yeah.
To give back to Christ and all that he's done, to just, I'm learning how to love.
And it's the whole, by the fruits of you shall know them. And I talked about this at one of the Ally Nights, I think you're probably there, that I've wondered and worried a little bit, like, again, am I being pulled into this? Am I pushing in the wrong direction? Do I need to stand stronger in what I think I know is right? And then the thought came to me that looking around at all the people that I've met that are in the LGBTQ, look at, I can say it now, like I can get all the letters in the right order. It's a community, and I'm like, these people are good, and these people are love, and they are trying their best to figure out how to have a relationship with Christ and with each other in a way that there's nothing evil here. There's nothing bad. Their fruits are not bad. And that's been really helpful to me, to just feel comfortable continuing to just do what I need to do for me, but also to explore that and to know that I don't know very much that I thought I knew.
Love that. Oh, and you hit on like loving yourself, and I wanted to talk about this with covenants, is for years struggling with my sexuality, being married to a wonderful woman, serving in callings, but all the while feeling like a fraud, feeling like I wanted to get rid of this. And even when I told her that I was gay, I didn't say that. I said, I've somewhere in my brain the wires got crossed, and I get attracted to guys. And I was certain that if I told her and I told my therapist, we could find a way to fix it.
I didn't realize at the time that he still thought he was going to be able to fix it, to
100%.
get rid of it.
I was not gay. 3 letters did not define my identity. I was very, very certain in that. But then God taught me a lot over the next several months, mostly by making my life fall apart. Like 6 weeks later, I went into a deep depression. I kind of had to pull back from church. I had to pull back from everything in life just to survive. But I remember the first time I didn't take the sacrament. And I was sitting in church, and it came by, and I just couldn't do it. Because for so many years, the sacrament and that covenant was a stick that I used to beat the crap out of myself. You know, I'd go throughout the week, and I'd have these impure thoughts, and I would be focused on guys or something, and I would come back and I'd be like, okay, this is the time. This time taking the bread, this time taking the water. And then it got to the point where I was like, I knew it was going to happen again. And I hated myself. I hated that part of myself so much. And I remember as the sacrament went past, this overwhelming feeling of peace came over me. And God was like, you're okay where you're at. And I remember once a few months later, I was up in Utah, and I hadn't been to the temple in a long time because for one point in my life, it was super peaceful. It was a place I could go to recharge, but then over time, it had become this place of extreme anxiety. And I remember going through and being completely anxious the whole time and talking to my bishop about it, and he had suggestions, but I just couldn't bring myself back. And I was up in Utah, and I went to a temple open house, and it was the Taylorsville Temple, which in my opinion is one of the prettier ones because it's different than all the cookie cutter ones, but we won't go into that. And I went through it twice at the open house, and I oscillated the entire time between peace and anxiety. And I'm sitting in the Celestial Kingdom, walking through the second time. Celestial King. I was in the Celestial Kingdom. Just kidding. I was in the Celestial Room, yes. And so much anxiety. Like I was having trouble breathing. I was just so uncertain. And I walked out, and I stood out in the hallway, and then I turned around with my back to the railing, and right in front of me was this painting of Jesus with the fish and the bread. And he's holding this fish and the bread in this little basket, and he's looking up. You know, he wasn't bowing his head to pray. He was looking up. And the words came to my mind was, this is all I have. Make it enough. And that kind of became my mantra. Was like, I can't be exact. I can't be the perfect Mormon guy. I can't do all of the things. This is what I've got. Make it enough. And it's been interesting because sometimes it doesn't feel enough. But as I've felt that peace and just loving and accepting Jeremy, I've in a way had to step back from church to feel that, because church became something that I used as a tool that wasn't productive and wasn't this beautiful thing that the covenants are. We forget they're a two-way promise, you know, and that they're a tool to teach us and help us grow and develop into people. And if we're using them as a weapon instead of a tool, then that's not at all what they were meant to. And I try to keep my covenant to Sarah, to be there we talked about this already, to be there to take care of her, to help her when she needs, and not even just to like take care of her in the, like, I'm the man coming to take care of the woman, but to help her grow and thrive, you know, and to see she doesn't have a teaching certificate. She got a job as a teacher. You know, she like seeing these things that she's accomplishing, and she's putting herself out beyond the wonderful job she does as a mother and she did as a wife. Now I get to see her as a human. And I think that's one of the things we miss, you know, like your friend that was like, I don't want to just make babies for eternity. That doesn't sound appealing, because we have value and worth that's way beyond the roles we play and just who we are as a person. And I think that's part of that. Like, we come to know God, not just for an external thing, but know him in what he created here inside us individually.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Sarah, what do you want to add?
Oh, I was just thinking of the last thing you said about, you know, having babies forever. I'm not a baby person. I love our children, but babies are hard. I like teenagers more, which is why I teach teenagers. But also just thinking about like divine nature and the godlike part of us and how hardwired we are to create something. And when he talks about have increase, I'm like, who said it was making babies? Like, it could be different things for different people, but like, I feel like that is a spark of the divine that stays with us and is going to continue to be with us. We're going to want to be creating something.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the reasons, you know, that we have families here and that we do raise other children, like, honestly, raising kids is such a refining thing. You think that you're like a grown-up and that you're logical and you don't have all the issues. Like, you feel really good about yourself, and then you start having kids and you're like, you find out a lot of your flaws and a lot of the ways you still need to grow and a lot of the ways you need to learn to love. And I think that the family on this earth right now is such, what do they call it? It's like it produces people. There's other ways to get to figure out who you are and to grow, obviously, but man, raising kids is rough, and it shows you what you're made of. And so that's why I think it might be really important here, and maybe not exactly how we think it might be in the next life.
Yeah. And so to not translate that what we understand and see here is exactly the same there. Like, we don't know. We don't understand.
We're given opportunities to grow within our own realm. You know, we were given kids because we needed the things that our kids are teaching us, you know.
And hopefully they needed something that we had.
And to put that on other people, be like, oh, you should have children because that's how you grow. It's like, no, like,
There's
trust
lots of ways.
That's
the
not what I
divine,
said.
trust that you're going to be given the experiences that are good for you.
Yeah.
And that will help you see who you were meant to be.
My eyes just got drawn to verse 6 in 131, and I don't know that I've like connected it, but it's very short. It is impossible for a man to be saved in ignorance. And I just like...
We could have done the whole podcast on
There's
this.
been a lot of good Christians
like,
who are
There's a lot of ignorance in society right now.
And I think that some of that ignorance is assuming that you understand someone else's situation and story and not having lived it.
You have the right answers for them.
Yeah.
I just saw this today about privilege, which I think is something that we misunderstand. People like rail against it, but it said privilege is when you think something is not a problem because it doesn't affect you personally. And that goes into ignorance when it does, not holding space for someone else's experience.
We're like, well, that's not my experience.
100%.
And Christ taught us that, you know, through the atonement, he took on everyone's experience. So everyone's experience mattered and was important. He didn't leave any out, right? The atonement was infinite for a reason. And not saying that we have to or even could go through that, but the
can't
example...
even really comprehend that, can we?
Yeah, not even a little bit. Scratch the surface. But the understanding of, I'm on earth with all these people and I'm never going to meet all of them. And I'm in a city with all these people, I'm never going to meet all of them. But I have the people in my life that I do meet and interact with.
Right.
Am I putting forth the effort to really try to see them, what their life is like, hear what they're saying instead of solving their problems or fixing things? Like, am I stepping into other people's shoes and going, yeah, I need to reserve judgment because I don't get it all, and step back into mine, and then do it again and again and again, and seeing that. And I just want to connect it to, and I haven't really shared a lot about this, but I feel like it kind of weaves into all of it, and so hopefully it makes sense. But in my journey and how I have, you know, the last 5 years have gone since I've come out, it has been really amazing and beautiful and difficult in a lot of ways. Complicated, it's a great word, right?
Yes.
But hearing other people talk about what they think my experience is is always a really frustrating thing.
Yeah.
And the people who think that because they heard one thing about me, they now have spent 5 seconds thinking about it and can hand me an answer that's so easy, is just what we do all the time, right? You hop online, you jump into the comment section on anything, and you've got someone going, well, here's the answer, here's what doctrine is, here's a scripture. And it's demoralizing that we do it to each other and to ourselves, and it's so difficult. And so I guess one of the things that I just want to say is people make this assumption that I came out because I wanted attention, or I came out because I wanted to date girls.
Want to sin,
I wanted women.
Like
I just really wanted to be some sort of ugly, gross, disgusting that I couldn't have otherwise. And this is going to be the avenue, which is absolutely insane. Some of the same responses.
People are like, it's more to life than sex.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not what this is about.
Not it at all. People who think that I just wanted an excuse to be able to leave the church. People who think that I just wanted a way to get out of being a seminary teacher. People, like, these assumptions that they make.
They're so illogical.
Right, I know.
And they think this is easier?
Yeah.
Right.
And when you don't step into the shoes, and that's what someone has told you, that's what people want, that makes sense. And you're like, hey, I don't have to think about it anymore. I got that answer. And in my decision to start to date Anna, and it was, I'm the kind of person that if I'm going to date someone, it's going to be one person, and it's one person, you know, like I'm not
all in.
I'm not like I really want to try and date, you know, just go on a bunch of dates and try and date multiple people. Like, my brain is not wired that way. By the time I am able to express that I like someone, I'm already in love, you know, right? So when I'm like, on a I want to date you, it's like I'm already head over heels, right?
What do they say? What does a lesbian bring to a second date? A U-Haul truck?
Yes.
You know? I'm just kidding.
and moving through that, and then deciding to get engaged, and deciding that we
Sure.
wanted to get married, and now we've been married for a couple months, and it's all new. But the point I want to make is people will look at my life and go, you decided to marry a woman, so you decided that your covenants didn't mean anything. You decided you didn't want to keep your temple recommend. You decided you didn't want to be a member of the church. Why do you keep trying to create the space that doesn't exist for you? You didn't listen to God, and now you're going to hell, right? In a nutshell.
Yep.
And they say that a million ways. And I just want to say
Over and over and over
very
again.
definitively and clearly, and speak for myself, I have had so many amazing experiences with God in the last 5 years
Right.
that have continued my progression in growing and becoming and understanding and loving. It is not something that I have done because of one impulse. It's not something that I've done for any one facet.
Right.
It has been experience after experience of God. And when I say God, I mean Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother inviting me in to understand who I am, who they are, and who we all are better. And one of the most spiritual experiences of my life was the day that I decided I wanted to marry Anna. And that experience and having that conversation, because I was able to say things to God that I had never said before. And that is my experience, and I cherish that. And I think that there's this assumption that because I came out, my spiritual experiences stopped, or I just started fabricating them because it's the storyline to say.
Right.
But I just want everyone to know that I have never felt like I have kept my covenants more than in the last 5 years, as I have understood what they meant, and I have made them with God. And I am not interested in anyone else's opinion on them, and it's okay if that makes people upset.
Right.
But there's a deep bedrock of faith and understanding there that I think if we will accept that, we can start to hear other people's stories and stand in their shoes and understand what it means to be in covenant
Right.
with someone and to build that relationship level. And so I hope that kind of connected and made sense, because
I love
that's
that,
just kind of
actually.
what's coming out of that for me.
I recently was talking to someone and I said, the idea of people are like, well, this is, what God has said about homosexuality. I'm like, do you think you know more than a queer person who grew up in any sort of religion? The wrestle. Like, it wasn't one day you just decided, oh, I'm gay, I'm going to do all this. It was a wrestle for years and years and
All
years.
this stuff I've based my life on actually doesn't mean anything to me
Yeah.
today.
And someone's like, I read a talk or I heard someone speak and this is
Yeah.
what God said about it. And I'm like, I don't trust that. I sat in this circle a few months ago at the Gather conference. There were 6 guys, all of us gay. We were describing our experience. It was all the same. All of us fought and fought and fought against our sexuality. And all of us had a spiritual experience of, I made you the way you are. I want you to have joy in who you are. And all 6 of us said, am I being deceived? Was the immediate question, and it's this long wrestle. And to assume that someone just makes that choice one day is so detrimental.
Because
And
it's easier.
It's
Yeah.
easier. It's my box. I don't
Sarah,
want
do
my
you think
box
it's
to be
easier?
given up.
It's so easy.
Oh, gosh.
But it's
Wow.
one of the coolest parts about it for me, and maybe you've had a similar experience, is as I've opened up for my own journey, now I have space for other people's. And I can sit and actually listen to someone else's journey and have no judgment. And often I'll be like, yeah, I see why you left the church. I completely understand that. I think that's the best choice. Like, I'm able to actually see God working in their life in ways that I wouldn't have guessed because I put God in a box.
Yeah.
And I said, this is how God loves his children. And God doesn't belong in a box. And
It breaks
it's
my heart when I hear
hard.
the phrase of too gay to be in the church and too Christian to be gay. Like that,
Yes,
it
like
hurts.
You have to pick between
hurts.
them.
It
Yeah.
hurts me. that
You
we've
belong nowhere.
done.
Yeah.
So scary.
That
Which-
was never anything that Jesus preached ever, that you don't belong with me.
Right.
Yeah.
He loved everyone.
Love that.
Jesus said, love everyone. Treat them kindly too.
Emphasis on that second part.
And we have
Treat them
looped back
kindly.
to concerts.
Absolutely. There was one, and I think we're like
Yeah, I
at
love
an
it.
hour. We probably should
Yeah,
wrap up.
yeah.
So, because
You have a thought. Let's make it the ending one.
This one in 130, it's verse 2, and the same sociality which exists amongst us here will exist amongst us there, only it will be coupled with eternal glory, which glory we do not now enjoy. I just was thinking about this throughout our discussion today of like the same sociality. So if you have a miserable marriage sealed in the temple and everything else, that's still going to exist in the next life. But if you have a deep bond with someone, maybe you're not sealed to or you're connected to, like it's the relationship you build more than the check marks that you check off, that I feel like is more important in this life, is actually building and investing the time. The second part of this thought was just the people that have taken time to really sit and understand. A family member of hers called me at one point and said he always had these deep questions, and he said, how hard and how bad did life get for you to decide to set on the altar before God everything, your covenants, your church, everything, to be willing to accept whatever came? And I said, really, and we talked about it and we had the same answer, to the very gates of hell. Like, we had to wrestle to the point where everything was there until I said, I'll accept anything, God, whatever you say. And then it was in that willingness to open up that I finally had the answer of God loves gay Jeremy just as he is. And it was deep and it was profound and it was like you described. And I had to tear a lot of things down to be open for that. And I both want that for people and don't, because it's insanely painful. And I can see the benefit of staying in the box. And I think there's some people that I'm happy that they can stay there, And then I see the other people that have stepped out of the box or nuanced or are doing things on their terms. And there's just beauty in all of the journeys. And I love that there's people on all sides and I get to hear their stories.
And what sounds like hell is forcing someone into a space that they're not ready for.
Yes.
Right? And I think that goes in a lot of different directions, right? Like, there are people in my life who aren't ready to have the conversations that I want.
Right.
And forcing those conversations never goes well.
No.
Right? And on the same thing, I'm sure they look through on the other side of that conversation and see me.
Right.
And there are things that they want to have conversations with and I'm not ready for. And I can't have those. And that is the part of humanity that we have to grasp.
Yeah.
That there's always other sides and other perspectives and room for growth and just adventures and journeys that we're not going to understand. So what do we do with what we don't understand? How do we respond to that? What does that look like and what do we do? I think is a great question and thought.
Well, if you watch politics, you can see how not to handle that.
Yeah, we are in a space right now. We got a lot of examples of don't do this.
Yeah. I was just thinking what you were saying about that, and I mean, however anyone is handling it is not wrong, as long as they're not hurting other people in the process. And that's where we really need to figure out how to draw the line as humans, is how to live our lives as we want to without trying to force other people into those boxes or hurt
Give
other
space
people.
for them to live life.
Because there's no God or no Christ that I've ever known that would think it's okay for us to be awful to each other for any reason.
Whatever your excuse or motivation or justification is.
If you're trying to live a good life and you're not hurting other people, then no one should have any opinions about what you're doing. Really.
Well, one thing she said in the journey, and as people were, having similar responses to me as they did to you, I remember her saying they weren't there as you fell apart. They weren't there in those moments where you were crying uncontrollably on the floor. They don't get to have an opinion.
Yeah.
They didn't see the journey you had to go through. And I think that's not just like an us thing. That's something that we could really apply in our relationships to other people. We don't know what they've been through.
Yeah.
There's
what they're currently going through.
What's going on under the surface.
There's a few people in the last few weeks that have done some really awful things, and they should face punishment for the awful things they've done, shootings and other things. But also, we don't know what they went through. So to judge and condemn them like eternally, or to make some assumptions, it's like, let's just be curious and find answers, and even more so with our neighbors, our friends, someone we disagree with. We think, how could they possibly think that? Maybe we should just say the same question. How could they possibly think that?
Yeah.
Like, what's been their life, and listen and give space for that. And then we'll get to know God more by seeing how he worked in their life. And some of the way he's working, they're misunderstanding, but the same is true of us. Some of the way he's working in my life, I'm completely a misunderstanding. And I'm okay with that,
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me think of the quote of, I'm not going to take advice from someone, or I'm not going to, let me say this right, let me try it again. I'm not going to take the criticism of someone that I wouldn't take their advice from.
Smart.
Right? If it's not someone I would go to advice from, then I'm not going to hold any weight for your criticism.
Right.
And that clarifies some things for me. That's helpful.
Absolutely.
So
It's hard to do that sometimes because we
Very
take things
difficult.
personally, but remembering, things like this, talking about my journey, talking about our journey, it's helpful because it reminds me of what I've gone through to be where I'm at. And increases that gratitude, So I think even in our own journeys, reflecting and being like, why am I here? What happened to get me to this spot? Can really help remind us of some good insights.
curiosity and courage.
Curiosity and courage. Always be wondering. I had someone ask me, they're like, well, once you figure out the answer, I was talking particularly about the shooting and the guy that attacked the church in Michigan, and I said, yeah, there's laws, there's punishments, all that sort of stuff. I don't care about that. I want to understand. Like, what happened in this guy's life? What happened that he got to the point that this was his only logical thing to do? And I said, like, I want to keep asking questions. He's like, well, once you get to the answer, I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, we're never going to fully understand someone else's experience. So I just want to constantly be wondering and asking and trying to understand another layer and another layer, because I think that's where then I can start having love and empathy for people that are not just different viewpoints than me, but that might actually be a mortal enemy. And I love Orson Scott Card in the Ender's Game when he talks about, once he's trying to destroy his enemy, and once he finally understands his enemy, he can destroy them. But that's also when he truly loves them.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, one of the best ways of breaking down all these barriers we keep throwing up between parties, religions, everything else. It's just take a minute and understand. The same person said, we should ban pride parades. And I said, do you know why people go to pride parades? And he didn't. And I said, maybe you should ask that question.
Yeah.
Understand why something exists before you just go about banning it.
Yeah.
I could talk all night, so
Sarah, any last thoughts or?
I was just, when we were talking about all the political divides and stuff, I was thinking there are a lot of issues with the church and with people in the church and stuff, but it touched me how people showed up for the family of that man and started like raising money for his family, knowing that this is going to be extremely hard for them too. And that's one of the reasons I still have faith in the church, because it's bringing people close to Christ in some ways. Like, everyone has their own journey, but enough so that as a group, a lot of them could say, hey, we don't know why I did this. We forgive him. Let's see what we can do to help.
Yeah.
And that really made me feel good to be part of that group of people. It's nice to sometimes have the good things show up, because there's so many good things. And I wish that more of it would show up in all spaces and not just in the ones that we're most comfortable showing up in.
Oh, I like that. Trying to see the good in all of it.
Well, it goes with what you said earlier about fruit. We can debate doctrine until the cows come home. But the fruit is what matters. How do you actually treat another human? And for people it was hundreds of thousands of dollars they've raised for the guy who committed this act and his child who has a lot of special needs and health problems. And they've raised a ton of money as church members to support this family and to show love. And I think that's a huge fruit.
And leaving space where there might be some people affected who can't.
100%.
Right? Like, I
Absolutely.
can't do that right now. And it's like,
100%.
that's not how you show your Christianity in that moment then. If that's not where you're at,
No.
there's other
Yes.
ways, right? And so
And I would be so grateful if I
Yeah,
was
well
that
said.
person and
Yeah.
couldn't do that, and there were other people willing to step in and
That
do
could.
it because I couldn't.
Yeah.
And we do that for each other, hopefully, in a lot
That's
of other
community.
ways.
That's community. That's family right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope in our conversation tonight that we haven't, we just want to once again reiterate, we're not trying to prescribe anyone's path or anyone's choices. We're not trying to say, look at
You
us, look at
should do
this, do this,
this,
do
right?
that. I hope that message came through clearly, that our focus is creating a space where we can share where we've been, where we're at, where we hope to go, and to see that from as many different perspectives as there are people willing to share and continue to grow that space. So thank you so much, Sarah and Jeremy, for being here. And thank you for our listeners for sticking with us. And we hope that you have heard something that's useful to you, or has sparked a thought or some curiosity or something that you need. And so thank you so much for being in the scriptures this week with Claire, Jeremy, and Sarah. And this has been the All Out in the Open podcast. Thank you so much for listening.